also my father's legacy was always about putting Indian food on the global palette permanently. Now developing our app. In fact, I'm very proud of a new app and I'm announcing it for the first time.
I think this is one of the most interesting bits I've heard about running a restaurant business. Hi, welcome to the Retail Stroll powered by the Economic Times Great India Retail Summit 2025. I'm Pallavi Goyal and today we are spicing things up with the man who has made Indian dining bold, cool and unforgettable, Zorawar Kalra. Hi Zorawar, thank you so much for joining
so
us.
Good to see you.
Zorawar, this is a beautiful property and it's named Bow Tie. Just talk to us about the name.
You know, the name actually has no real significance apart bow tie. You know so our logo is also a bow tie. It just sounded cool, and the word tie sounds like Thai.
Yeah.
So and there's a whole story behind how two people met, and then how that's a made-up story, of course. But it's basically a cool-sounding name that we thought was resonating at that time when we opened about 7 years ago. And yeah, just a cool-sounding name with a Thai vibe.
Excellent. Speaking of names, what does the word massive restaurant signify? I mean, how did you come to that?
You know, I always like to think at a large scale. You could call it a character flaw or whatever, but I always like to think in a large magnanimous manner. And one of the key things I learned when I did my MBA was to think at a massive scale and not at a boutique scale. And I think that's what kind of drove me to choose that name. And it's always for a fun business like food. The company should have a fun name. You know, boring names are kind of a little boring. Yeah. So we thought we'll choose a name that we wish for the company. Our wish is to become massive, and so that's why we chose the name.
Excellent. When we talk about the brands that come under your umbrella, from Fuzzy Cafe to Masala Library, you know, these brands are really iconic. But over these years, what have you observed? What has really resonated with your customers?
You know, I think it's about constant. It's about the basic pillars. You know, you got to give great hospitality. There's a big difference between hospitality and service. Service simply means picking up and bringing it to the customer and serving it to them. Yeah. Hospitality is much deeper than that. It's a connection. It's a personal feeling. It's a certain vibe that you feel from your guest and the guest feels from you. And I think that's the difference. If you maintain that aspect and you maintain it in a nice, well-maintained restaurant with high quality of food. If you do these three things, I think most restaurants will succeed, because the failure rate, as you know, in our industry is very, very high. The morbidity rate, I like to call it, it's extremely high. It's one of the toughest industries in the world. And the second thing I would say, apart from focusing on these three main tenets, is really, really focus on innovation. You know, people talk about fast fashion, how companies like Zara change their, their clothing every few weeks. I think in the restaurant industry is just as important. If you don't do radical changes and innovations every few months, and I'm talking about literally 3 months to 6 months, you could cease to be relevant. You could lose mind space. There are so many restaurants. The barriers to entry in our space is not that high. So a lot of people come up. Some of them are doing a great job, and you know, there's sometimes, in some cases, in some markets, oversupply. There's more supply than demand. So if you keep innovating, you'll make sure that you have a separate identity, and there's something that's fresh for your customers every time they come to your restaurants. And I think that's what's the key: product innovation and innovation.
I think now this is actually a very interesting point. You mentioned about innovating your menu, innovating, you know, how you're offering to your customer. But for restaurants, customers usually resonate with that one iconic dish, you know, that one iconic drink. It's a tightrope.
Yeah, there are hero products. Yeah. And I think personally also, when I go to a restaurant, whenever I go to a restaurant, I always know what I'm going to order usually beforehand, unless it's a new place I've never been. If it's a place, one of my favorites, I know exactly what I'm going to order, and sometimes I even phone it in. And there are hero products, and I think that's the essence, and you're going to make sure that those remain consistent. If there is a lack of consistency in those hero products, the chances of your customer not coming back, your guest not coming back, are very high. It's very easy to retain a customer if you've got them back 3 times. In fact, the rate of making them be a lifelong customer after the 3rd visit is almost 80%. So if you're able to, first, there's only a 30% chance they're going to come back. Second time, there's a 50% chance they might come back. If they come back a 3rd time, there's an 80% chance. And chances are that they came back for that hero dish or that special hospitality. And I think if you can just maintain that level of consistency for those products, and don't remove them. For God's sake, do the popularity analysis. Don't remove dishes that people love. Sometimes people want to be, we changed the full menu. Well, don't change the full menu. Change the dishes that don't work. So it's quite, you have to be data oriented in this space. It's a very it's a very data-oriented space, to be very honest. And there's a lot of tech, tech that you can utilize effectively. And if you do, you'll actually end up taking leapfrogging the competition, perhaps.
You talked about the use of data, right? In the restaurant business, we don't see that coming out as effectively, right? At Massive, has there been a regular practice where you guys are using data and technology in your everyday operations?
In every aspect of our everyday operations. In fact, I would go that far. So we pride ourselves on being a very tech-oriented company in any case, and we really love it. I'm also a little bit of a geek. I love technology. I just love the latest gadgets, but also the latest how technology can actually help solve real business problems, and I think that's the key. So, and everybody talks about AI, and that's a buzzword that everybody talks about, but it just goes even far beyond that. Even before AI came about, almost all of our systems were tech based or IT based. For example, we use a CRM system which is completely automated. We have a very advanced material management system, like a mini ERP. We don't have a full blown ERP right now. We're in the process of implementing that, but we have a very solid material management system which is fully tech oriented, from the input to the production to the sales. Everything is linked. The HR system is completely tech based. The payment systems are completely tech-based. Obviously, the loyalty program is we're now developing our app. In fact, I'm very proud of a new app, and I'm announcing it for the first time. I think that app is gone gold, which means we'll be ready to launch it hopefully before the end of the year. If not, then the first week of January, you'll have an app. And in my opinion, it's a beautiful app that combines our ecosystem of online virtual brands like Louis Burger and Slice Pizza and Nashville Fried Chicken with our offline brands like Bowtie and Masala Library and Farzi Cafe and Papaya. And you get points, and it's going to be a super rewarding app. So, and we're very proud of the app. We've spent 6 months to 8 months just working on the UI. It's taken us a year to build it, but it took us 6 to 8 months just building the UI. So it looks nice. It's fast to open. It's quick. It's very intuitive. You can make your reservations. You can order food. You can do everything in our entire massive ecosystem on one app. And it's going to be very rewarding. If you download it and you start using it for bookings or for ordering food, you're going to get a lot of benefits and a lot of rewards.
I'm going to be one of the first few members to download it. Definitely. Sounds very exciting, right?
I can't wait for people to find out about it.
Zorawar, you talked a lot about end-to-end implementation of technology. Talk to us about how skilling and upskilling your employees look like on this front.
So there are two aspects to that. One is, of course, the technology itself, how to use the interface, the panels, the dashboards. That's done usually by our third-party partners, and we're working with some really good companies that have their training departments. They come and work with our teams. But then there's a second aspect, which I talk about, which is the most fundamental aspect of our business, hospitality. And for that, we have our own learning and development department, and we also outsource. So we have a combination of our own team and some outsourced people, and their job is to teach our team about hospitality, about the tenets of hospitality, about the difference between service and hospitality, and most importantly, about how you should build a culture where the guest is the number one priority for you. If they can do that, if they can kind of make sure that that culture that is part of our DNA remains within the system and does not get diluted, then we've done our job. So the L&D department, which is the soft skills training, is, in my opinion, even more important. And that includes, menu knowledge. That includes how you deal with your customer from an emotional perspective. So when we choose our employees, when we choose our colleagues and our partners, we look at the EQ aspect, the emotional quotient aspect, even more than the IQ aspect. Because I think in our business, if you're polite, if you're making sure that the customer walks out of your restaurant happier than they walked in, then you won. It's not important about necessarily knowing every single detail on how that dish is made. Yes, that does enhance the experience, but it's about how you made them feel.
Massive currently enjoys a very good and dominant position in terms of the revenue that you're clocking and also in terms of your presence, right? At this point of time, what would expansion really mean for you?
I would not call it a dominant position. We're just happy and we feel lucky to be in the position we're in. What we're very happy with is the way we've kind of spread our business across verticals. So we have a very robust delivery business that is now almost 35-40% of our total turnover. And we have a very strong offline business, which is a traditional restaurant space, which is also, is burgeoning and it's growing very quickly. And we're also especially happy and we feel lucky that we have brands like Farzi Cafe that are now in many countries around the world. I mean, we're in Europe, we're in all over the Middle East, we're in Canada, we're in the US, we're about to open in New York now. In fact, by middle of January, or definitely within the January of 2025, we will be opening our first Fuzzy in New York. So we feel privileged and lucky, and it's all because of the incredible work of our teams. And also, my father's legacy was always about putting Indian food on the global palette permanently. And I think with Fuzzy Cafe, we've taken that step. The goal with Fuzzy Cafe is to have an Indian restaurant as one of the top 3 dining destination choices in any major city of the world. So whether or not it's a Fuzzy, I don't know, and I frankly care less about that. But it should be an Indian restaurant. It should be a restaurant that serves good quality Indian food. That should be one of your top 3 choices for any traveler in any major city of the world, not just Indians.
Absolutely. Wow. I think you spoke about that beautifully. But to achieve this combined goal of, putting Indian food on the world map, as an industry, what would be your, your request? What would be your advice? What would be your call to all of the industry members to come together and achieve this?
The good thing about our community is the unity. So our unity is prevalent within our community, and I think that's a very positive thing. I think I've known other industries. Obviously, I'm a part of only this one, and despite the fact that we all compete with each other, there is a lot of loyalty. There is a lot of camaraderie, and the NRAI, the body that I represent as well, is one of its kind. It's the only body where everybody is working together towards common goals. There's a lot of sense of fraternity to it, and I think I'm very proud of that. My bigger request would be to the authorities, to the government, things like the GST input tax credit. I think that is not giving us the ITC and being singled out as an industry. I think it goes against the grain of the GST regime as to why it was introduced. So I think it's absolutely critical for the government to introduce ITC back to us. We want our people, especially the smaller ones, to be able to enjoy the benefits of ITC. There are many other challenges: single windows, longer running times, ease of doing business. You have to understand that this country has got some of the most incredible touristic treasures, but we have not even scratched the surface of the potential of tourism of this country. And one of the key pillars of extending tourism or increasing tourism is the restaurant and the hospitality industry, the hotels and the restaurant sector. If we encourage them, if we have our own industry, if we get industry status, if we have our own minister, for example, it will help solve a lot of the problems because we'll have an ear that is there to listen to our problems. GST input tax credit, ease of doing business, single window for license, industry status, these are the things that we really need.
Talking about this calendar year, we have seen pressure across industries. One, how has the food business performed? And second, how critically has this constant inflation that the consumer has dealt with? How has that impacted, one, your supply side of things, and second, your demand side of things?
The year has been, has had peaks and troughs. And we expected the recovery to happen a little bit sooner. We expected, because all the Diwali and the other major festivities, Navratras and all were done by October, we expected November to be full on back, return to form. It took a little longer in November. December is definitely looking a lot better. But to be honest, this year has been a combination. Some great months, some not so great months, some months that we exceeded expectation, and some months that we haven't. So yes, I think there is some pressure on demand. I think there is some pressure there. Inflation is definitely creating a challenge because our input costs go up and we cannot pass on that cost immediately to the consumer. The consumer is very value conscious. I would not call them price conscious, I'll call them value conscious. So you have to be careful about when you pass it around. And you have to also support your vendors, because your purveyors, if they are not going to be able to supply you at pre-agreed, and all of us have annual contracts, but if they're absolutely getting hammered with high costs and they cannot supply it to you at that cost, then you have to support them at least for some time. So we've had to do that. So we've had to incur some of that added input costs, and we've not been able to pass them on to our consumer, and we don't intend to in the short run. Obviously, if the inflation does not stop, then at some point in time, the restaurant industry will not be able to absorb those costs, and they will have to reflect in the pricing of the menu products, right? But I'm hoping that does not happen, and I'm hoping the market returns. December is definitely looking better. I'm hoping the last quarter of the fiscal year, January, Feb, and March, are going to be much better. I hope the demand picks up.
Excellent. I think very well said. Thank you so much, Zorawar.
Thank you.